I am Akita from ZOZO. Thank you for introduction and thank you for joining with me today. So let me introduce myself. So I am Kaito Akita. I belong to the ZOZO SRE block technology division SRE department. And I joined the ZOZO Technologies on April of 2020 after school. Then I belong to the team manages network, the database and web services of ZOZOTOWN, and also builds operates hybrid environment. And currently I am leading SRE area project of front-end replacement. Today, I would like to talk about the initiatives for a load test for ZOZOTOWN New Year's sale by covering December 2020 load testing and also the December 2021 load testing and also the planned load testing on December 2022. So I hope that this would be a good reference for people who are planning for a large-scale load test. This is today's agenda. So first, background and purpose of load test. So currently, the ZOZOTOWN is carrying out replace project, and so far, each microservice conducted the standalone load test, but the web server and the API server used the New Year sale size load testing was not done before December 2020 because both web server and the API server are in on-premise, so a commercial environment has to be used for test. So that's why the testing was avoided. But the consequence of that was on January 1st, 2020, when New Year's sale was started, immediately the system couldn't handle a huge increase of user access. So many users couldn't access. So it was necessary to perform load test for users to use ZOZOTOWN comfortably at New Year's sale. And there are two purposes of load test. So according to the user flow, reproduce a load equivalent to a New Year sale and identify and improve the possible bottleneck beforehand. And also another purpose is emergency drill to communicate with the relevant section smoothly in case of trouble. Then, we would like to aim for users to use the ZOZOTOWN comfortably. So I would like to talk about the characteristic of load test. So far, scale up and scale out was repeated according to the growth of the ZOZOTOWN growth. And it was really difficult to prepare the infrastructure environment, which is equivalent to the commercial. So we avoided the load test. But to perform the load test, we have to use the commercial environment. So we decided to conduct the test at the midnight when access is fewer. So this is the biggest characteristic. So I would like to talk about the New Year sale on January 1st, 2020. So this is the system configuration of the 2020 January 1st. So there was a problem took time to procure on-premise resource. So we used VMware Cloud on AWS to enhance the on-premise environment to cloud and also reduce store logic. We moved the reference data to API, and it became easier to scale. So I would like to talk about the service operation, and so there is a service availability, and this can be calculated according to the formula which is described here. So the service availability is 99.9%, 3 days per month. So this it is the New Year sale. So we check every hour whether it is below the 99.9%. So this is the web service availability. So straight after the start of the sale, you can see the availability is deteriorated. And this is the upside, the service availability. Straight after the sale start, and also the service availability is deteriorated. This is further deteriorated compared to the website, but both of them show the unstable availability. So user cannot use the service in a comfortable manner. So I would like to talk about the load test we have conducted to avoid this situation. So this is the organization. So
2名で
Two people were in charge of conducting a load test, and the backend engineer was cooperating to create a scenario. And SRE DB infra resource needs to be reinforced ahead of time, and they were asked to monitor resources. And there is a major timeline to conduct the load test. In October 2020, the owner was assigned, and spending 1.5 months, preparation was done to conduct the load test. And this is about the timeline for load test. We coordinated with the business side, and within the time limited, we decided when to conduct the load test. However, as for the schedule, we had to utilize a production environment, and we couldn't verify, and validity of a scenario was not verified. Therefore, including a spare day, we set up 4 days for load test. On the day when load test was carried out, between AM 0 o'clock to AM 7 o'clock, we conducted a load test, and between 2 and 5 AM, we conducted several times testing. As a result of the test, we checked if we thought it was not necessary to do that. At AM 6 o'clock and onwards, we had a review, and that was the end of load test for the day. And as for communication remotely was done, but it was the first attempt for us to do with the load test. And there was a team who came to the office, and that worked remotely. Were using Discord to share information. And I'd like to talk about runtime environment for load test. AWS gathering tool was used as a base. The environment for the load test, it was the first time for us to challenge containerized environment. In terms of the image, operator was implementing run task API, and aggregator was in use. Aggregator runner was to launch gathering tool, and also tasks were fetched, and each gathering tool will implement testing at the specified time. And the gathering tool implementation time was recorded, and by reporter, log was collected from SE and came up with a report. Aggregator runner was shared with Slack on webhook. That is how it worked. In order to exert a massive load, we had to prepare environment for execution. There was a flexible way of changing the size, and also we were able to flexibly change the scenario and also target value. Given the fact that there was twice larger traffic for New Year's sale on January 1st, 2021, than that of January 1st, 2020. And also, there were many people who stayed at home, resulting in more accesses to ZOZOTOWN, and it was difficult to access to New Year's sales in 2021. This is the system configuration as of January 1st, 2021. Compared with 2020, there are more microservices, and application destination is changed, and security reinforcement is done on web. VMware Cloud on AWS was utilized on premise, which remained unchanged. And realizing that there were changes of the system, we created a scenario. Splunk was utilized for analysis and access ratio per feature unit, and request per sec instantaneous max value, and query parameter samples were captured. And this was right after New Year's sales. We were reproducing such a sale using Splunk in order to come up with a more accurate scenario. We had a coordination with various regions. And this is an example of a feature of a scenario created. This is the using access scenario by Splunk. In order to decide the number of requests to implement the scenario, we are using a request for the scenario execution. Web apply 240,000 requests per sec. Target is 40,000 per sec. And in terms of 2 to 5 in the morning, we were conducting a test. This is the detailed timetable. We exerted a load gradually, and on that day we made a judgment what we should do. This is on-premise server addition. In January 1st, 2020, on-premise VMware Cloud on AWS were in use. There were 180 web servers and 343 APIs prepared. And for load test, in order to tolerate twice more access, that is what we were prepared for running a load test. As of January 1st, 2021, there were 452 web servers and 812 APIs we prepared. And in 2020, December, this is a summary of load tests. In total, we conducted 3 load tests. First of all, there was an error of a scenario. It didn't work. In the second test, web scenario, and we exhausted web applications, but web load was applied. Therefore, we had to rerun load test. For the third test, we were able to endure 1.25 times higher load, which is a challenge. This is the summary of load tests in December 2020. Compared with January 1st, 2020, content-wise, we had a better result. And based on existing resources, to what extent we can endure load was calculated. And also in terms of how we should respond to troubles, it was done by each team. And the service availability is what I'd like to show you. In 2021, service availability of January 1st. This is showing service availability. Right after sales, you can see that there is a dip of service availability. But compared with 2020, it was easier for users to utilize ZOZOTOWN. However, at 12 o'clock, you can see that service availability dropped because of hit-selling products were accessed in a concentrated manner. This is the service availability January 1st, 2021. Just like web, we see the similar trend. Right after sales, it is less than 99%. So engineers were relieved to go ahead with the sales series. And there was an impact on users. But we have to have measures to cope with hit-selling products. Right after load test for New Year's sales, it was tough in terms of physical situation. And also for event campaign is different. The more it is issued, the more it gets fluctuated in terms of web server. If there are more coupons issued, we have to conduct a load test. In 2020,
So the December 2020 load test presented points for improvement. So the 21 load test we conducted that based on the learning from the 2020. This is the organization. I was appointed as a project lead, and support Mr. Yokota was appointed, who led the 2020 test. The basic work was the same as 2020, but the number of the team is increased from 6 to 12, and the number of the backend team is increased because to add the settlement function and also the improve the communication and collaboration. And this is the rough schedule up until the load test. To avoid the continuous night work, we started the preparation from October. So it is 1 month earlier 2 months earlier than 2020 test. So I would like to talk about more in detail. So this is the execution schedule. So consider number of the coupon. Picked 2 days with many coupons, including 1 spare day, and also picked non-consecutive 2 days for testing, total 4 days. So the schedule on the day is the same as 2020 from AM 0 to 7. So from AM 6 to AM 7, we did the review, and also we also decided the next action. So it was clarified. It clarified things to do, and so the 2020 test we were mixed up the work from home and work from office, but 2021 everyone works from home. And we switched from Discord to the Google Meet, and the more people use it, and prepare shared a review document with test result for easy review. And also the execution environment is changed. So using Gatling operator, we can conduct the load test. And Gatling operator is automated distributed Gatling. And this is the Kubernetes operator to conduct the load test. And the execution image is that first the scenario and also the Gatling custom resource management is prepared. And using them, the Gatling scenario image is created. Then it is pushed to the AWS EC, and also the resource manifest is applied, and the deployment is done. And after the deployment, Gatling runner is executed, and the scenario is executed. And after that, the Gatling reporter could produce the report, and it is also notified by Slack with a webhook. So at that time, I have not used the EKS before, but I had the knowledge, so we could process it smoothly. And also, since it is in-house, so we can add the feature that we want to use for testing easily. With regard to the Gatling operator, please refer the tech room of our company for detail. And this is the target value. So the number of the access and also a number of the UU and number of the PB on January 1st, 2021, and the growth rate is analyzed. Then we calculate the number of the access as 1.6 times compared to the 2021. And then so this is the system configuration. This is significantly changed. The big change is that the settlement function replaced phase 1 release, and also the BFF release, and also we lift the API server to the EC2, and also application side, we implemented Akamai for security enhancement. And with regard to the scenario creation, basically it is the same as the test of the 2020. And to add the new scenario, we analyze by using the dashboard. And also the settlement scenario is added this time. So this is the one feature. And also to use the commercial environment, we have to prepare the test account and also the scenario. And backend engineer collaborated and supported us to prepare the test account. And when we created the scenario, so the readability is lowered because number of the line is big, and it was difficult to do the adjustment. So we divide the scenario to address that issue. And next, the web scenario example. So the settlement card and also the order scenario are added. And also the home screen was renewed. So the scenario for a new home screen was added. And 2020, the December, also we used the number of the requests per sec we used, and together, web and app, it was 28,800 requests per sec, and the target value was the 46,080 requests per sec for testing, and the scenario execution timetable. So we conducted the load by gradually increasing the load. So the API server was lifted to the EC2, and I would like to talk about that. VMware Cloud on AWS. So same segment, we can actually put the equivalent VM, but there were some issues. And to solve that issues, we changed the API server to EC2. So by doing that, we can reduce the preparation time to 1/10, and the operation load was also alleviated. And if you want to know the EC2, please refer our tech blog for detail. And by using EC2 and also the web server and the API server together, we enhanced the number of the server to 484 servers. And also API server, only EC2 is used. So having EC2 only with regard to the API server, it is closer to the microservice, and latency is improved. In 2021, December load test summary. So total 4 tests were conducted. First one to conduct it in a commercial environment. So there was a mistake of the scenario. Only one time request per sec was conducted, and also the settlement scenario, the load was bigger, and the second time the load was 1.25 times bigger, and also we had to use the spare day, and the third time we couldn't solve the overloading issue, and settlement scenario we changed the load to the one time, and other scenarios we achieved the target value of the 1.6 times, and also we decided to conduct a settlement test on the last day, and the fourth we could actually achieve the target value other than settlement function. So we could identify the depletion issue beforehand. So we could identify the bottleneck beforehand. And also the communication is very important on the day. So when the trouble is happened, we could share the same understanding. So the result of the load test, how the service availability is changed, I would like to look at that. So this is the service availability of the January 1st, 2022. So we could have a good service availability, and also the user can use the ZOZOTOWN in a comfortable manner. But the 2020 like 2020, at 9 o'clock, the availability deteriorated significantly due to the popular item. This happened. And also, this is the upside, the service availability, same as web. The situation is the same as web. Straight after the sale started, and availability is above the 99.9%. So the engineers had a peace of mind, and the user could use the site in a comfortable manner. And thanks also the even though we implemented the Akamai, but at 9 o'clock, due to the popular product, availability was deteriorated significantly.
シナリオの
We conducted a load test, and we have to improve scenario and accuracy. And I think there was a load placed on the participants, and this is an area where I have to improve. In 2022, in December, I'd like to talk about how we are tackling this load test. The teams is leading the deal, and the other team is supporting that. And there are two teams working. A working group is composed of SRE members, and they are creating a scenario by being responsible for each area. And just like last year, we have assignment. And compared with the node test last year, we started to work from the end of September so that we can make a working group start working. We are creating a scenario now. And for details of node test preparation, I'd like to talk about that. Schedule remains unchanged, but issues we had in December 2021, punctuality was an issue. And on the day when we are going to run a load test, people are asked to come to the site by 7 o'clock. And for execution environment remains unchanged. We are using gasoline operator. As the target value, based on their analysis, there was no major change. And as of January 1st, 2021, given their to be on the safe side, 1.6 times larger than on January 1st, 2022 will be done. And we are going to analyze latency. Next, this is the system configuration for January 1st, 2023. There is a possibility that we may not adopt this system configuration. Front end replace phase 1. Replace was released, and there are two options. As for scenario, and this is similar to load test of 2022, and scenario. There are some additional scenarios. Right after the sales, we added a scenario, but assuming some hot selling products, which may across the day, there may be a last minute request for shopping, and we would like to run load test for various scenarios. Web app scenario is shown here as an example. Web is revised, and we changed the scenario as well. We are considering to change scenario in some areas. Just like December 2021, request per sec will be similar, and we will adopt what we had before. Timetable here is a scenario right after New Year's sales. And hot selling products, there may be a last minute shopping. So I talked about load test by January 2023. This is going to be the summary. We are going to create scenarios in accordance with the changes in ZOZOTOWN. And I talked about how we are tackling a large-scale load test. By conducting large scale, engineers can have a peace of mind for New Year's sale. And I'm sure that users can use ZOZOTOWN comfortably. I hope this will be taken as a reference for those who are engaged in conducting a large-scale load test. Thank you very much. Mr. Akita, thank you very much. Now on, plus talk is going to be held. Questions will be asked by questionnaire to ask in more detail. We'd like to respond to your questions as much as possible. If you have questions, you can press the question mark at the bottom right. And that is where you can post the questions. Please ask questions. Mr. Takehiro Yano of Yahoo Japan is going to ask a question. Please introduce yourself.
Yahoo のシステ
So, Cloud Platform System Integration Department, Yano. What I do is that, so there are different kinds of the Yahoo Japan sales event, and there is a spike, and I am preparing for such spike. Thank you very much for having me today. So, do you have any questions in terms of the presentation? Yes, let me ask some questions. Thank you very much for your presentation. So I am doing a similar role, so it was very interesting. So in your presentation, the creating the scenario is not easy, and I have experience of that. Well, closer to the real situation, to conduct a test in a real environment and create a scenario, what kind of things you pay attention? So I said before, so we use Splunk for analysis, and so on the day of the New Year sales from 0 to 1 o'clock, the Splunk has the access log. Using that log, so the actual the URL list is also used. Then the number of the request of the list and what kind of features are used most, those are analyzed, and based on that we generate the scenario. And also we talk with the backend people and discuss on the scenario, and new scenario is also added. So from the actual log, and you try to create a similar access ratio when you develop a scenario. So when you develop a scenario, what kind of things you are always struggling? So I belong to the SRE, so what kind of request is sent? And if I send this kind of request, then it will increase the load. But equivalent request is sent, and overloading is generated in the test. So to adjust the parameter is not easy. So because you are using the commercial environment for testing, so that's the pain point. So I think it is really you are very brave to conduct a test using a commercial environment. So what kind of points you pay attention? So different teams are involved, and make sure that no error is occurred in any team. So the resource information is shared. So we add the load, but when something happens, we can stop the load. So because if something happens during the test, and it will impact on the user, so we make a really careful operation with many people. How many? Like 26 people, or close to the 30 people are involved. So you do that at midnight, right? So everyone, the 30 people, working during the midnight. Yes. And I have another question. And so around 6 o'clock in the morning, you do the review. So you said that in your presentation. So in early morning. So I think it is not easy to have such a review meeting with such many people, but everyone is so collaborative, so supportive. So through the operation, they actually summarize the point, and those points are shared among the team. So it takes like less than 30 minutes to do the review meeting. So during the testing operation, each team summarizing the points to be reviewed and considered, and that's actually shared among with other teams. So during the review session, that is done very smoothly, and it won't take a lot of time. Thank you. So with regard to the scenario, I want to ask a little bit more. So the microservice is also generated. So the trend is a microservice. So using microservice and conduct a test. So there is a difficulty to use the microservice. So for example, to a certain component, the load is overly loaded or applied, or some component no load is applied. So what kind of care do you pay?
本当にかけるまで
Before we exert the load, there are many things we don't know what will happen. But this year, we came up with an idea to see which URL we should access ahead of time. And we couldn't make best use of such information. And what is the impact on which microservices if we exert a load and where? Resource was going to be monitored, and we tried to modify in the area where we were able to do, but in the area where we could not modify, it was deferred to another day. So you said there is one real time, and also you make an analysis ahead of time. Yes. As for pre-analysis, as you mentioned, because we are offering services, specs may be changing and the system configuration may be changing at all the time. Among them, in order to maintain a scenario, is there anything you do? Yes. In order to maintain scenario, there can be a total difference. We are changing scenario every year. So rather than doing that, we repeat what we do from scratch, from the beginning, and we review scenario every time. So every year, you are reviewing and analyzing a scenario. Yes, we are spending a lot of time. It's a lot of work. I see. Thank you very much. Now, from load test, I'd like to talk about the measures to cope with the load. If there is an increase of load, I think you are conducting various measures. One of them may be configuration change. Are there anything you take as measures to cope with the load? As SRE, we have to reinforce. But backend engineers may review content. Although we don't want to do that, if there is a massive load to be applied, content may be reduced ahead of time. That is how we cope with it. I see. So you may have to reduce the number of content. Of course, we don't want to do that, but if we identify if content doesn't have to be cut off, we will decide that. I see. And another question for testing size. You mentioned twice and 2.6 times more compared with the initial testing. When you estimate the size of testing, I think it's difficult. But in estimating size, what are the things you do? There was one of the things I touched upon, PBS. In addition to access log, we make an analysis And based on that data, compared with last year, how much there will be a change. US PBS in January the 1st, 2021. Then we will estimate how much there will be in January 1st, 2022. If there is an increase of 1.4 times, based on that, we assume the size for January 1st, 2020. So based on certain data, we make analysis. As a result, we set up a target value. For this year, there wasn't many changes compared with 2021 and 2020. So if we keep it at a higher level as a target value, that would be okay. For sales or non-sales campaign, metrics may be compared. Based on that, you can predict. Yes. What is the accuracy? It wasn't as good, but New Year's sale is what engineers just want to wait and see without managing it. Of course, there is a cost increase, and I hope we can manage that in terms of expenses. Yes, you may have to be concerned about cost or expenses. Other questions coming. There are 1,000 servers. What is the specification for one server?
本当じゃない。
Sorry, I am not in charge of that, so I am not sure, but a pretty good specification we are using. So then the 1,000 servers. So it requires a lot of cost. Thank you. And 23 New Year sale service availability, what would be like previous year? There will be some dip at one point, or can you secure the stable availability? So last year, we achieved the target of the availability due to the hot product. There is some point of time the availability was reduced, but we addressed the hot selling item. So we want to maintain the level of the 99.9% or above. So this year, that graph will not show any dip this next year. And any other questions? So there are more than 100 scenarios. What kind of variation of scenario do you have? So I showed a little bit in the slide. So those are the good examples. And so we covered everything which is necessary for EC. So access to the home screen, and then browse the products and put the product into the cart and go to the settlement, and also the registration to the favorite. And those are the scenarios we have prepared. So in case of e-commerce, other than the state transition, what kind of the product is displayed, or how many or products are purchased? Do you have any variation on that? No, we don't have a lot of variation. So right now we have one pattern that like pick the product and put into the cart. So if we can have more variation on those aspects of the scenario, that would be great.